Gary Lineker about to be booted out of his job at the BBC. We know that he's got a contract that's going to eventually end, but is it time that his career came to an end even sooner because of what he shared on his Instagram story that has caused absolute outrage? He's shared this video from Palestine Lobby that says Zionism explained in less than 2 minutes. But what do you see below that? Yes, that is a rat. And why is that significant? Because, well, the Nazis described Jews as rats, and this is deeply offensive and considered extremely anti-Semitic. Now, Gary Lineker, what's his response? Well, he claims he just didn't see the rat. He uses a spokesman to explain that he did not actually see the rat. So in the Telegraph, they are reporting the outgoing Match of the Day presenter is said to have failed to spot the image in a video he shared by campaign group Palestine Lobby. Footage now deleted on Lineker's Instagram story on Monday sparked fury among Jewish groups, as rats were historically used by Nazi Germany as a slur. That is why this is so offensive. And a spokesman, rather than Lineker himself, because he's too much of a pussy to speak up for himself, has now told Telegraph Sport that he deleted the video after learning of the symbolic meaning. So I guess Gary Lineker, he just had no idea that describing Jews as rats was offensive. The spokesman says whilst viewing and reposting a video, Gary did not notice a rodent emoticon added by the author of the post. He added, although if he had, he wouldn't have made any connection because he's got no idea, apparently, that using a rat to describe Jews is offensive. The repost has been removed, the spokesman said. Now, before we look at some of the outcry in response to this, let's just take a quick look back at an interview that Gary Lineker did recently where he was asked whether he sees himself as needing to be impartial on the issue of Gaza.
You could be partial.
I know where I stand on this. I'm sorry, it's more important than what the BBC, what's going on there is, the mass murder of thousands of children is probably something that we should have a little opinion on.
But the BBC as a whole needs to be impartial about it.
Why? It needs to be factual.
It needs to be impartial about a conflict, doesn't it? And it's hard.
Does it have to be? It wasn't impartial about Ukraine and Russia.
And you might say
God's
that
sake.
Why does it have to be impartial about? I understand if it's partial about our government and things in.
The BBC has to be pro-Palestine, according to Gary Lineker, it would seem. Like, why do they have to be impartial? Why do they have to show both sides of an argument? Like, hello, they are funded by the license fee. They are not a channel that has the same freedoms as other channels to have a bit of spin and a bit of their own opinion. They need to be impartial. But he genuinely thinks there are not two sides to this debate. It's pro-Palestine or you're just wrong.
This country and everything like that. But something that's going on that far away, why does it?
Because the Israeli position is that what is happening in Gaza, and by the way, I'm not here as an advocate of the Israeli government, but the Israeli position is that what is happening in Gaza is a response to the slaughter and capture of innocent Israelis on October the 7th. And
which was awful, which was truly awful.
And that full context needs to be there when discussing what's going on.
But that's not the full context, is it? Because the full context starts way before October the 7th.
So there we go. Gary Lineker doesn't seem to think that he's got any responsibility to be impartial about Gaza, but it seems he certainly took it a bit too far with that Instagram story. Let's take another look at that again. Zionism explained in less than 2 minutes with a little rat emoji there. Now let's take a look at what the campaign against anti-Semitism have said about this. They are furious and they are trying to push for Gary Lineker to be kicked out of his position at the BBC. They say Gary Lineker is playing the public for fools by pretending to be one. He claims to want to spread awareness about events in the Middle East, but also claims to be so ignorant as to be unaware of the dehumanizing connotations of a rat symbol. He acts like an accessible man of the people, but when caught out, issues feeble excuses through a spokesperson like a shady politician. Yeah, it was a little bit shady and weak, wasn't it? He hasn't got the balls to actually come out and say for himself what he has to say. Such aloofness and reckless indifference would be appalling from any public figure, but Mr. Lineker is the BBC's #1 star and has built himself a media empire that gives him immense influence. They go on to say that comes with a responsibility that Mr. Lineker has repeatedly refused to bear. The BBC has turned a blind eye for too long. It is long long past time for him to go, and he must go now. Frankly, the fact that he is still there this morning is a sign of a much deeper rotten culture of impunity at the BBC, which has only emboldened people like Mr. Lineker, allowed bigots to become journalists and influencers, and even led the BBC's humiliating admission that it sent money to the family of a Hamas official. The rot will only end when firm action is taken and an example made of those who are turning our national broadcaster into a national embarrassment. And we had Tim Davie, the BBC boss, admit that they do bear the cost of Gary Lineker's, silly tweetings and whatnot when he is not impartial. But will he stay? Will he go? Well, it seems like his, the campaign against anti-Semitism here has mentioned the fact that there is a problem, of wokery and a bubble where their idea of the centre ground is, completely off kilter to the rest of society at the BBC. But what he has said is so offensive that even employees at the BBC have started to turn against Gary Lineker for this. Jewish staff at the BBC are absolutely furious. One of them said, this is from GB News, a Jewish employee said, "It is quite simply disgusting that the BBC has not kicked Lineker out. His repeated offensiveness to Jewish people has clearly brought the BBC into disrepute." They added, "The interpretation of Zionism he has shared is anti-Semitic, and the fact that the BBC thinks it's acceptable is deeply upsetting to its Jewish staff, myself included." I mean, gosh, what a time it must be to be a Jewish member of staff at the BBC. I would be so embarrassed of the organisation that I am working for if I was a Jewish member of staff at the BBC. What a crazy state of affairs. Gary Lineker, will he stay or will he go? Let me know in the comments below what you think the BBC is going to do about this. Will they hang on to him until the end of his contract? He's expected to still be around for about another year because he's going to do the World Cup in 2026. Should they just keep him until then and just tell people, don't worry, look, he's on the way out, so, don't worry. Or should they say, sorry, this is so egregious what you've done that you've got to go now? I don't even know contractually how that's going to work with him, if they've got the power to do that, but let's see what happens. Tell me in the comments below what you think is going to happen to Mr. Gary Lineker. We will, of course, keep you updated here at Reason, so make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. I'm Chloe Dobbs. See you next time.